YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with my NFL Week 11 score predictions, predicting every score to every game all year long here on YouTube. And there's also extra score predictions, those ones from Junior. They are on the Patreon. He is a defending champ. Kind of can compare mine here on YouTube to his on Patreon every single week. Score predictions, playoff predictions, updated every week. I did those this week. Got some sneaky teams, some wild card teams sneaking in the playoffs this week. And then 2020 NFL mock drafts, updated order, updated prospects every single week. All of that is part of one package deal. So you get a lot there and you help support the channel. So patreon.com/thegoathouse. There is a link in the description. And we have a 40K subscriber goal here at the Goat House by 2020. So please help us out by subscribing to the channel. Full NFL content, all kinds of coverage in season, but we don't even stop there. Off season, full free agency and draft coverage. Click that like button. Check us out on Twitter at GoatHouseNFL. And this week's score predictions, a lot of good game, a lot of toss-ups like there has been the last couple weeks. We're also going to take a look at some of the lines here, see if there's any games worth putting money on, like we always do here. First game, Steelers-Browns, one of those toss-up games right off the bat here. I went with the Browns. I've been riding the Browns. I was kind of talking about how they actually can make the playoffs. That was the week before the Broncos. Mainly looking at the rest of their schedule and knowing that they're going to get Kareem Hunt back, and they got Denzel Ward back a few weeks ago. Then they lost to the Broncos, and I pretty much scratched that off. Not completely, but pretty close. And then they go and beat the Bills. I picked the Browns to beat the Bills last week. It's an impressive win at the end of the day, but within the game, if you watch the game, it was a little sloppy. So that kind of scares me for this week because they still are sloppy. But that running back duo of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is deadly. And not only because they're good football players, because the Browns' offense becomes unpredictable, which my number one rule for an offense, be unpredictable, and that helps them in that way. Whether it's Nick Chubb in the game, Kareem Hunt in the game, you don't know what they're going to do. They're both in the game. You don't know who's getting the ball. And it's not like it's a clear better running back with a average running back, and it matters who gets the ball. No, it doesn't even matter, and you don't know. So I think that can work to the Browns' favor here. Steelers get a really good pass rush. The defense has been great. Mainly the front seven's been great, and that could be the reasoning for the Steelers winning this game. Too much pressure on Baker, and the Steelers know how to come away with the turnovers. Looking at what Fitzpatrick's done, I mean, even like Joe Hayden's been playing at a pretty high level, so they can definitely come up with some turnovers. I think we're going to start to see Baker get a little better, and then the idea of them having an even better running game, an unpredictable running game, which opens up an unpredictable passing game, that helps Baker out a lot. So I'm picking the Browns here. It is a toss-up. It's not a game I'd put money on. It wouldn't be the worst bet, I guess, taking the Steelers +3 because I just don't see them losing by more than that, and they realistically can win the game. They're playing pretty well. Thursday, though, I don't really like putting money on Thursday night games in general because they're weird. They're weird games. I got the Browns at home here. If it was in Pittsburgh, I'd probably be picking the Steelers, honestly. So that should be a good game. Next game is the Cowboys and the Lions. I got the Cowboys winning by 10, and they're -3.5. So I'm liking that game. Even if Stafford plays, I'm kind of thinking he plays, and I'm kind of worried about him. His health at this point. How will he play? Last year, towards the second half of the year, he started getting hit a little more, and then he was kind of taking sacks. We saw that he would go down on his own. Could a similar thing happen this year? It's very possible. Their offensive line's a little better this year than it was last year. I still like this Cowboys offense. The only flaw the past week, last week was Zeke not getting going, but I really like Dak. Amari Cooper looked great. And I think Zeke gets going in this game. So I like the Cowboys offense in this game. Their defense steps up enough here, 30-20. So they're well over that 3.5 line there. So that's an interesting one for sure. Next game is the Jags and the Colts. Maybe the toughest game to pick of this week. Maybe it's a little safer if you had to put money on this game for some reason. Maybe it's a little safer going with the Jags because they realistically can win the game, even though I'm picking the Colts, and they're getting 3 points. I got 21-20, that close of a game. Still waiting to hear on some Colts injuries. I'm expecting Brissett to play. Like to see Pierre Desir back out there, but we'll see. T.Y. Hilton most likely out another week, but we'll see. 21-20 Colts. I think they out game plan them. Nick Foles, what are we going to get? A rusty Nick Foles or a rusty Nick Foles. By that I mean, a guy that's just coming back from an injury, playing a pretty good Colts team. Is he going to be off because he's rusty? But we've seen him come in off the bench pretty cold but play hot. We've seen it before. So which type of rusty Nick Foles are we going to get here? But I'm going to go with the Colts 21-20. I think the main reason the Jags win their games is because, there's always different reasons, but I think the number one matchup they would like to have every single week is their pass rush being a factor, and it can be a factor in this game. I love their pass rush, but the Colts don't allow good pass rushes to be a factor. They won't allow that to be the reason they lost the game because of their game planning, because of their great offensive line. So I'm going to take the Colts in that one at home, 21-20. Another one, if the Jags were home, I'd maybe taking the Jags, so it's that good of a game. Next game, Bills and Dolphins. I got the Bills winning by 10. Dolphins defense looks like it's stepping up. The Bills are -6, so I'm feeling pretty good about that -6. It is a little scary because the Bills have not played their best football this year. They have against some lower level teams, but I guess the Dolphins are one of those teams, but they are getting better at the moment. I like that this is under a touchdown. There's really no reason why the Bills shouldn't win by a touchdown, at least a touchdown, I should say. I still really like their defense, and the games they really struggle at is just the games where they're the better defense, but it's not too far off, while they just cannot keep up scoring with the other team. This is not that game, even though they're away. It is just not that game. So I like the Bills here. I've only got one Bills game wrong this year, and that was the Titans game. So the Bills, I got them winning by 10. They are -6, looking like a pretty solid one there. The Dolphins win again. Something's up there. Something's up. The Broncos and the Vikings, I got a 10-point win for the Vikings, and the line happens to be 10.5. So not one I would touch. A lot of people out there think it's a lock for the Vikings to win by much more than that. I don't really see it. The Vikings, when they play teams like this, for one, they get pretty conservative early. They do it when they know they're better than the team. It's kind of like their worst, not their weakness. They get conservative. We saw the Redskins game. That's what they do. They just thought they were going to go in there and win easy. Let's just run the clock. It worked out for them because it's the Redskins. So they got to be careful with that. But really, at the end of the day, they're the better team. They're at home. They're playing at noon. They play very well at noon. Kirk Cousins plays very well at noon. But again, I think they'll be a little conservative. I think the Broncos defense is very solid. I like that defense a lot. Vic Fangio, great defensive mind. So I think more of a defensive game. The Vikings have been very, very solid on offense. I don't expect that much offense, but I expect a very good defensive game from the Vikings because you look at their pass rush. They are at the top of NFL in quarterback pressures. Daniil Hunter is number 1 in quarterback pressures, and Everson Griffin's actually number 2. So you may go over the sack column and expect the Vikings to be number 1. They are not. They're not far off, but they're really at the same time not that close to being the number 1 sack team. And that's because they're getting real close to getting these sacks. Quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball. And I think this is kind of that game where they make that jump to actually turning those pressures into sacks. Usually that comes with the pressures. Usually over time, the teams with the pressures start to get the sacks to match that. I think this is one of those games where it can match. I think they can force a couple turnovers here on defense to win the game here. I got them winning by 10, but with that line, I think it's too close of a call there, mainly because the Vikings they are not afraid to get conservative, and I hate it. Next game, we got the Saints and the Bucs, and this was my bold prediction of the week, my upset of the week. I like the Bucs in this one. Obviously, I'm aware that it's an upset. I'm aware it's a bold prediction. But it's something to keep an eye on is Marshawn Lattimore. It sounds like he's week to week, so that sounds like he could be out this week. He came out of the Falcons game. We saw the difference with and without him. We saw Marshawn Lattimore throughout this year. A big-time improvement from last year. Insane season. I think a top 3 corner. Last time they played the Bucs, we seen him shut down Mike Evans. Not only shut him down, hold him to 0 catches, 0, while Godwin was playing very well. Mike Evans recently has heat up on the top of Marshawn Lattimore. Let's say he's out of the game. Godwin, Evans, I think they do some good things here. I think they do some good things. Winston's just, I'm allowing him to get a turnover. Two's pushing it. 2 is okay against the Cardinals. You can turn the ball over twice against the Cardinals. You just cannot turn the ball over 3 times. That really shouldn't do it too. But Winston's got an arm. He's got to trust himself a little more. I mean, he trusts himself a lot, I should say. I should say he should play things safe a little more. Saints -5.5. Not one I would put money on, honestly, because obviously I think the Bucs are going to win, but I know it's a it's an upset pick. It's a bold pick. But the matchup reason, looking at Marshawn Lattimore, him being out, I know the Saints defense has been great. I'm still high on it. This is really not based off what they did last week. People will say that, the Saints will be fine. They're a legit contender. They will be fine. Seems like the Bucs usually get one on the Saints every year or two. So I like the Bucs in this one, 30 to 28. Yeah, even though plus 5.5, it's not one I'm not sure if I would touch. If it was around 7, then yes, I'd be all over that for the Bucs. But just a gut feeling. Let's see. They got Ronald Jones going last week. I like the pass rush. JPP is getting going every single week, along with Shaq Barrett, who's top of the NFL in sacks, and he's more than just a sack artist. He's a playmaker. So we'll see if that could be a factor here against Drew Brees and that offensive line that struggled last week. But again, I'm not trying to make a statement here that the Saints are going downhill or anything. It was a rough week last week. It happens. It could happen again this week if they lose this game. There's really not going to be any more concern for me or from the Saints unless they score like no points or something. But even if they lose this game, most likely I'll still think they're a legitimate contender, one of the better teams, maybe the best team in the NFC still. That's just how it is. Just a single pick here. Next game is the Jets and the Redskins. I thought I was kind of being bold with this one too, but the Redskins are actually favored, and I'm picking them. Plus 1.5 for the Jets. Another one that I wouldn't really touch. You see a 2-point win for the Redskins. And you may say, is that a little high scoring for both teams, maybe the Redskins? And it kind of is. I think a good mixture of offense and defense in this game. I think there'll be drives where either offenses can move pretty quickly and get a score real quick. But I think there'll be those series where the offense makes a terrible turnover and the defenses come up clutch, because these two teams, their best ball is on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense can get a turnover. It's realistic that either of or both of these defenses is going to get a turnover and a touchdown, or just set their offense up for a good field position. People are just automatically hating on Haskins a little bit, doubting him a little bit. He's had a rough year, but he's never really legitimately been the starter, especially off a bye week. I believe in him a little bit in this game, nothing crazy. And still Darnold's another guy that I still worry about too. So we'll see. I think at the end of the day, the Redskins off the bye, being home and with the Jets have a good D-line, but that Redskins D-line with the edge rushers of Ryan Kerrigan, Montez Sweat, by the way, starting to pick it up the last few weeks they played. I think all of that just points me towards the Redskins. It's a good game, but it points me towards the Redskins. 2-point win. Should be an interesting one. Even if it's two bad teams, it still should be a pretty good game, honestly. The Falcons and the Panthers, another tough one to pick. I'm confident in the Panthers winning, but tough to figure out the scoreline in this game, because what type of Falcons are we going to get? We're going to get last week's Falcons, who can definitely win this game. Are we going to get the old Falcons? Are we going to get, they were more defensive Falcons last week. We don't really know what we're going to get here. I think a mixture of both. The Panthers, I think, will get a pretty darn good pass rush on the Falcons. While the Falcons don't have much of a running game. Brian Hill actually looked pretty solid last week, but I like what Kyle Allen's doing. I think he's getting better. Yeah, he made some mistakes that kind of cost him a little bit in the Packers game, but I really like what I saw. People go look at the stats. You make up your mind that way. That's not how I do things here. What I saw was I actually saw an improvement over a week from Kyle Allen. So I like him in this game, and I got them winning 27-17. It's a tough one to predict the score, though. I like where I'm at with the Panthers scoreline. The Falcons one, it's so tough because, like I said, it can be low scoring. I think this is somewhat low scoring for them. It can be worse. It could be 13 to 14 points, too, because depending on the Panthers pass rush getting after Matt Ryan, or the Falcons offense that we know that the offense that hasn't costed them 1-7 before last week's game. It was the defense that did. So maybe that offense can show up. So a lot of question marks here. The Packers were able to move the ball pretty well against the Panthers when they needed to. So who knows with that one, but I am confident in the Panthers, 27-17 here. The Texans and the Ravens, I had the Ravens winning by 4, 28-24, and the line happened to be 4. So not one I would really touch if I had to pick one to take here. I'd say the Ravens, but it's very possible they can win by 3 points. I like them at home. The differences between the two teams, you look at the offense, both top-tier offenses in the NFL right now, but the Texans can throw the ball downfield a good amount better, I'd say, than the Ravens. The Ravens can do it, but the Texans are better downfield. The Ravens, are much better in the run game, though. Carlos Hyde actually started to pick it up recently. We'll see what he can do. But the Ravens are much better, obviously, in the run game, the best running team in football, in my opinion. And I mean, you compare the offensive line, still a little more impressed with the Ravens' offensive line, but you're kind of back and forth there on offense. You can argue either way. The defense is what kind of the defense and where this game's at is kind of a deciding factor for me. The Ravens' defense improving every single week. By the end of the year, it really could be the best defense in football, and I mean that. And the Texans, not a terrible defense whatsoever. To me, it's just kind of middle of the pack, and then now you don't have J.J. Watt, so it's tough there. I like the Ravens. A good mixture of offense, defense this game while being at home, while being hot. I like the Ravens this one. But the Texans, we've seen them put up a fight with the Saints first game of the year that they could have won. We've seen them beat the Chiefs. We've seen them just show up and beat teams that some people just don't expect them to win. So maybe this is one of those games. But I got the Ravens 28-24. Next game is the Cardinals and the Niners. I am shocked by the plus 11.5. Not that I love it or anything, but I think that's a lot. And I do kind of like it for the Cardinals there. I think we could see somewhat of a similar scoreline to the last game, as you can see, somewhat similar, but a little different how we get there. And there's actually a case you can make for the Cardinals to win this game. The Niners coming off a Monday night game, so I know it's only a day short, but it is a day short. It was a rough game, in terms of just, it was an overtime game. It was a battle. There was a lot of defense, a lot of hard-nosed football. And there's a lot of injuries for the Niners, too. And then the last time these two teams played, it was a pretty good game. The Cardinals actually figured out how to move the ball, I should say, better than pretty much anybody did on the Niners defense all year, while the Niners won the game because Jimmy G played his best game of the year. I don't think he plays that good of a game. He can play something similar. And the Cardinals, I think, can have somewhat of similar success on offense. I don't think as much. So, I mean, you can kind of make the case for the Cardinals there for all the reasons I explained. You just can't let Jimmy G go off and do what you did last time. Try to get the points up on the board. They just played each other a few weeks ago, and that kind of creates mysterious things to happen. Just out of nowhere, the other team will win the game a few weeks later, especially in San Francisco here. So there's a case for the Cardinals everywhere. The Niners are the better team. They're at home. I like their defense a lot, so I'm taking the Niners, but closer than you think here, 24-20. Jimmy G has to take care of the ball in this game. He has to take care of the ball. Next game is the Bengals and the Raiders. I got a 34-20 final. The Raiders will have no problem scoring. Only thing I worry about with giving them that whopping 34 is, will they get to a certain point and get conservative? They don't really tend to do that, but they haven't played the Bengals, the worst team in football yet, the worst defense in football. So can they get to a certain point and kind of slow it down a little bit, run the clock, try to get guys healthy as we get later in the season, which is a thing. We've seen that. So maybe that will be the reason they don't get to 34. Then we can see somewhat of a low-scoring game. I know Junior actually went that route in his score predictions on the Patreon, which are up now. He went that route, kind of the Raiders get up early and just run the clock. Josh Jacobs, and it's just much more low-scoring than you think. And I can actually see it for the reasons I explained. But at the same time, the thing that makes the most sense to me is the Raiders just going out and scoring and doing as much as you can to put the team away, and they can get in the 30s pretty quickly, actually. Just looking at the matchup, I always go off matchup, and it's for the most part worked for me. So 34-20 is what I got. I think here and there, I think mix in and you can get some things going. Maybe Finley connects with Tyler Boyd for a touchdown. Very possible. 34-20 though. Patriots Eagles, I got 31-27. It's weird seeing the Patriots giving up that many points, but off the bye week is usually when the Eagles offense starts to, really get things going. Not really off the bye week, I should say later in the season. It's about that time. They don't have Nick Foles, but Carson Wentz is very capable, and he can definitely get better here. So I can see them, throwing the Patriots off, because you can run on the Patriots. They got a pretty good duo, and I think that over time can open up the passing game. But I just don't have it being enough. It's just hard to pick against the Patriots, hard to pick against Belichick, Tom Brady off the bye week. They had so much time to game plan for this. It's like they do in the playoffs. They always have that bye week. They have the extra time to game plan for whatever team they're going to play. They have an idea, and they're the best at doing it. That's why they have so many Super Bowls. That's why Belichick's the best coach of all time. It's why Tom Brady's the best quarterback of all time. So it's hard to go against them here. But realistically, the Eagles can win the game. Excited to see N'Keal Harry. He was my number one receiver in the draft. Very excited to see him. Hopefully he can do something in this game. Hopefully they give him a shot here. So I like the Patriots. I can see him kind of in his first game active if he is active. It's a Belichick move to kind of force him the ball. So that's something to watch out for here. 31-27 Patriots. Bears and Rams, I think a defensive ball game because they both have good defenses, but mainly because they both have pretty terrible offenses this year. I trust the Rams a little more on offense, especially at home on Sunday night. 17-13 Rams. I just don't have a lot of trust in Trubisky. Last week he played probably his best game of the year. There's really no hope for. I'm not getting any hope for him. From just one game, that game at all. Goff. I worry about him under pressure against the Bears. Pass rush. It hasn't been as good as we expected, but I think he could pick it up in this game. Mainly because the Rams' offense line is very, very bad and it's beat up. And then you look at the Rams on the defensive side of the ball. The Bears have been giving up some, outside pressure, but Aaron Donald is going to bring the interior pressure no matter who he plays. So that will be a factor as well. I got the Rams winning this one 17-13. Not much offense here. Not much offense in here, but I like this Rams secondary. I just don't see the Bears being able to throw too much, especially with some pressure in Trubisky's face. So I got the Rams winning that one 17-13. Plus 6.5 there for the Bears. If that goes to 7, yeah, that's an interesting one then because I don't see the Bears losing by more than 7. As you can see, I just don't see the Rams putting enough points. But realistically, this game could be, obviously I didn't predict it, but it could be, it can be like a 10-6 game even, something along those lines. 6-3. What if we saw that? Last year these two teams played, both the quarterbacks played just absolutely awful. So could we see that again? And that was when their offensive lines were much better. So interesting. Next game is the Chiefs and the Chargers. I got a 30-24 win for the Chiefs. One of those games where the Chargers, their defense has been solid, but how much of an impact what does it make when you play the Chiefs? You can slow them down a little bit. It's kind of more of those games where you have to keep up scoring with them. I don't know if the Chargers can do it. I don't know if I trust Phillip Rivers fully. I think the running back duo could get going pretty well. Rivers will be okay. He'll make some big time throws here and there, but I just don't think it'll be enough. It's hard to see. We keep saying it's hard to see the Chiefs lose another game, but they very well could here. But another game with Mahomes back, I think he put up the big 30 there. I got the Chiefs winning 30-24. They've been getting some good pressure too from the defensive side. Obviously, they need more work on defense, but they can get that pressure on Rivers, which could cause a turnover possibly. So I went with the Chiefs there, -3.5. I feel much, much better if that goes to 3. I think I start to really like it if it goes to 3. Just a big difference between, whenever a game's at a 3 versus 3.5, and 7 versus 6.5, around there, that's like huge differences. So it's definitely games like that worth keeping an eye on there. Still some injuries, a lot of injuries at this part of the season we got to keep an eye on before completely deciding some of these games. But yeah, that's my score predictions. There are more and different score predictions on the Patreon, patreon.com/thegoathouse. There's a link in the description. Also got straight up picks, recaps, power rankings, all kinds of NFL action here at the Goat House. Please subscribe. Help us out a bunch trying to get that 40K goal. That's going to do it for this one, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.